He was at work day and night covering that news story.
How long was he there at that station in Indianapolis?
I'm trying to think how long we were in Indiana. Boy.
It sounds like you've traveled quite a bit.
We traveled quite a bit. Oh, we had another big event in Indianapolis, and it was Peppy. Dear Peppy. All I have left of Peppy. Our wonderful mongrel dog that we picked up from a farm. And he was such a wonderful little black dog, and we seemed to be a complete family of 5 children and a dog. And
how did you name him Peppy? Or who named him?
I can't remember. The kids probably named him Peppy. And he was always, they didn't have leash laws, so he ran freely. We used to go swimming in pools, as I can see here.
How long did you have Peppy?
Oh, Peppy lived only 7 years. Poor Peppy.
All in Indiana, or?
No, because we moved again. I think we were a year. It seems to me maybe a year in Indiana, and then we went back to Boston because your father got a job at Boston University managing their TV station. Hold on, I gotta look for the year.
So.
Okay.
You moved back to Boston.
Okay, I guess we moved back to Boston around 1965. Well, that was the year Robert was born. You were born in Indiana, but I believe we moved back in around 65. It was wonderful to go back to Boston because it was a city that I always loved, and I actually tried to find some old friends, which I did, and we found a house, and your Aunt Martha lived also in Newton. We lived in Newton, Massachusetts, which is just a suburb of Boston, and I felt so happy that you were going to be able to go to such a good school. It was probably the best school system in the country at the time, and I was never so happy to be in Boston and with my children.
And how did the kids like all this moving around?
I think they were too young to really understand what was happening. I think they just accepted it because we just were always on the move. We were always on the move.
They never complained about leaving their friends or leaving the street?
No, we lived like gypsies, and I'm sure they missed their friends, but as I say, we were here a year or 6 years or 2 years, whatever. They never did get to have lifelong friends, so that I feel really bad about for you guys. I feel really bad.
Are your kids still gypsies today?
No. Actually, it seems like kids do the opposite to what their parents do. They seem to have stayed in California, and they live the life maybe like my dad did. He stayed in one place, and you guys have stayed in one place. I mean, I know you've traveled, but you haven't moved about your apartments or your houses. And,
did you like moving? Did your husband like moving?
I'm glad. I didn't like moving. I felt like I would no sooner get settled. I didn't like the fact that I had to uproot all the furniture, all the kids, even my friends. And yet, at the same time, I always looked at life as being a bit of an adventure. And I guess from that standpoint, I thought, well, I can forget all the bad stuff, the drinking or whatever. And in that respect, I didn't mind moving on. In Boston, it was nice to have my twin sister there. And she also has 5 children, as you know. So,
did you think by moving so much it escalated your drinking, or you think if you would have been in one spot?
Well, you become very isolated when you drink, and I didn't have family until we moved as I say, to Boston. It was the first time my twin and I had lived in the same place, and our kids did get together a lot. I was a bit jealous because my twin's husband was a doctor, and she had a very big house, and they had money, and we were on the poor side of the tracks. But still, you kids got together, and we started going to Cape Cod. And life, in my eyes, as a family, probably those summers, we had 7 summers in Cape Cod, and probably the happiest time of my family life with you guys. I was really happy. We had some wonderful friends from Montreal. They were all in theater and the arts, and I'm sure you recall some of those times and running about the campground. It was a lot of good times.
So what are these photos?
Oh, these are some old photos from some of our friends down Cape Cod. And we used to go to the beach every day because we were on vacation. And it was one of the most beautiful beaches, Long Nook, in North Truro. Everything was old, the old wharf. And you kids always seemed to have a good time. In fact, I was really surprised that Daniel was Robert. Robert was picking up chess when he was 3 years old. He could play chess with the French people. It was really a wonderful experience. And we saw these same people for 7 summers and became quite close to them. And like this friend Charles, the school teacher, said, we're just a regular old colony, he said. And we were. We were some of the first. The French people came down in bikinis, which in those days, as you can see, I wasn't wearing a bikini, but they were ahead of us in style. And they were, as I say, a really delightful group. In Boston, back at home, well, here we are at the campground. I guess it was when I was about 32, you guys, that I had finally drank myself to death or near death, or had just had gone overboard. And I guess one day I took quite a few pills and decided to do away with myself. And
why did you do that? You were unhappy there?
Yes, I was unhappy because I was happy in Boston, but I still felt it was a lot of work, a big family, and in that respect I was unhappy. I loved you guys. Please, I loved you. I love you today, and I loved you then. I just sometimes felt very, very alone. And this one particular day, I remember after I had taken all the pills, I believe I must have been in a blackout when I called your father to come home. I said I couldn't pick you up. I can't remember that day at all. But somehow I thought I had OD'd, and I guess I thought I was going to die, and I didn't remember calling Alcoholics Anonymous, but somehow that same day they kept calling back when Will came home, your father, and I kept telling these people I didn't know who they were. I didn't remember making a phone call to them. I said there must have been some mistake, but they kept after me and talked me into going to AA, which I did. And a lot of things did change. It was different for me to live without drinking, but I tried.
Was it hard? Not to
Sure.
drink?
I think any alcoholic that shows up. Well, first of all, I didn't believe I was an alcoholic because we were living in the suburbs. I looked at alcoholics as living under bridges and looking like drunks. I didn't think I looked like a drunk, but then again, after I went to meetings, I realized that I was hiding the wine, and that wasn't the way a mother should act. Anyway, I gave up drinking, and I tried to get my life together. It was a new experience.
For good?
No, no. I gave up drinking for 3 months, and then I think the neighbor wanted to go celebrate her divorce, and somehow I ended up drinking again for another, I don't remember, maybe it was another year. And I guess I was trying everything. We were smoking pot down at Cape Cod.
Wait. How was that 3 months not drinking? Was it hard or was it easy? Or did you realize that you were an alcoholic, or you didn't?
Oh yeah, it was. Well, the first 3 months, it was all a new experience to not be drinking, and I just I liked it, and I in fact, after the 3 months, I was sort of surprised that I took a drink again, but I did, and it was really hard. I think I was taking sleeping pills. I tried LSD. My granddaughter shouldn't be hearing this, but that's where booze and that whole life takes you. You know, Olivia, don't do it. It's not fun. Not really. Anna, I'm not going to like you hearing all this, but your grandma was a naughty girl. But I wanted to clean up my act, and when I went back to AA the second time,
A year later?
I decided to change my act. I was physically sick, and I had some bleeding problems that weren't normal, and suddenly I thought, oh wow, it's one thing to commit suicide, but it's another thing to think you've got cancer, or now you're going to die of something else.
Were you serious
And I
about
was,
this suicide?
oh yeah, well, I didn't that day. I guess I would have to say I could get into a major depression. But I'm not going to talk too much more on my drinking, because my life after that is all sober. From age 32 to now that I'm 67, I have not had a drink. I've not smoked grass. I gave up smoking when we moved to California in '71. Our life in Boston was, I guess, a big change, where some big things happened like that. I believe the family was complete with 5 children, because as you can see we have no more. And I remember when your father decided to take a job in California, I was really unhappy. I was really unhappy about that, because I loved our little old house in Boston. We had a great little old house, and I thought we were going to be there forever, and I was going to be in my rocking chair on that porch. Anyway, it was a...
Did you discuss the move to California with your husband?
I just followed along. I was not the working member of the family, although I remember working at Hertz Rent-A-Car at Logan Airport. I took odd jobs, but I generally had to be there for the kids, since he was the one who was the big wage earner. In fact, I think your dad also taught a class at night in addition to the day job, to bring more money in for the family.
So you never discussed your feelings about moving or unhappiness?
No, well, their father, I'm sure they heard plenty. They heard, you guys heard a lot of arguments, a lot of anger.
Do you feel bad about that?
Sure. I mean, I know you guys are pretty unhappy. Once in a while you mention that to me. You know, you remember, and it's not pleasant to know that happened. But that last summer, when we packed up everything to come to California after the decision was made, I remember 2 things happened. The man who had put the last thing in the truck to come out here, he said, "Wouldn't you like to throw a match and forget it all And I thought, how could he say that? That's everything we own. Everything we own. And we had a friend. She was a black lady. God, Cookie? No, that was her son. I can't believe it. Gloria. How could I forget dear Gloria? She's in here somewhere. And Gloria used to babysit you kids and the dog sometimes when we would go out at night. And she was really a good friend. And when we first arrived in Venice, California, we were just here a few weeks, and I received a phone call that Cookie, her son, they found him dead. They said somebody pushed him, or he jumped off the Bourne Bridge in Cape Cod, and it was bad news, from a dear friend. I want to get some of the other albums out. I was busy talking about Gloria and her son and our move, and I don't know how I forgot the most important event of the year was my father's death, my grandfather. He died in 1971, my daddy, my good daddy. It was quite a shock. He had some operation and then dropped dead of a heart attack. My daddy at 78 was gone, and I know we all went to the funeral, and it was pretty heavy losing my father. I know Pepe also got killed. This is all we have of Pepe. And the big move, it was a lot. It was maybe a good idea I'd given up drinking, because that was a big year. I just want to show a picture of Pepe, a little black dog, with Greg. Anyway, in California was a whole new experience, you guys. I remember the first night we went out to a restaurant. Some woman, she was an older woman, jumped on the back of a motorcycle. I had never seen that before. And I thought, wow, that's California. And everybody was walking around in casual clothes and saying, hi, dude. And I wasn't used to all the casualness. And I didn't know what it was going to be like for you kids, because, like I said, I love Boston. It was quite a change. In fact, when your father came out here to manage KPFK, again, he was working a lot, and I was responsible for you. But I also had started running in Boston and started doing a lot of running in California. In fact, I thought I was the last one, but I'm beginning to think I was one of the beginners here, because there weren't that many people running in those days. And the albums seem to have become shorter and shorter, because your mother went a little crazy with all her exercise. I decided to run every day. I started to go to Santa Monica College. My whole life was changing. I was like opening up like a flower. I should have been concentrating on you guys, but instead I was the one who wanted to play. And I do feel bad about that, but I couldn't help it. That's the way California affected me. We were in Venice for a short while, and I knew your father was going to go through all this. He had some money from retirement from the University of Florida, and I thought I better run out and find us a house, because we had such a big family, and I knew he'd go through the money, so I ran out and I found us a house in Santa Monica. In those days, they weren't as expensive like today.
What street did you find it on?
We found it near Sunset Park, and it was a nice little house with 4 bedrooms, and we set up housekeeping once again. I was without family, and that was hard. And, well, I remember, Robert, you were going to kindergarten, so that finally all my kids were going to school, and that's when I signed up for art classes at Santa Monica College, and I also took a running class. And I guess a lot of this is history, and you're all grown up now, so I think you know what happened, but in the running class, my teacher signed me up for a marathon, and it was 1976, and I ran my first marathon and won a trophy, and I was very surprised. I should have been on the sidelines for you, Andrew, although I did go to some of your surfing contests. And Keith, I did see you wrestle, and I was so impressed because you got up with this big guy, and I heard some fellow in the background say, "Oh, is this kid good?" And I thought maybe he was talking about the bigger kid. Isn't that awful, Keith? And you nailed him down. I was so proud of you, Keith. I was so proud.
What school was
He was at Samo High, and I was proud of Andrew because he beat this kid that made a big. He was surprised that Andrew came in first, and I said, "Well, my kid's a good swimmer. What can I say?" And Greg, I was always proud of you. You're always a very sensitive kid. You were the one who would hold my hand when I would take you shopping.
Where did you shop?
Well, I remember in Boston. Well, I thought I would have to give the kids individual attention, so each Saturday I would take one instead of the whole bunch, and I would take them down to Feline's Basement. I just read about good old Feline's Basement closing for good. Daniel, you were the easiest kid. You were so easy. In fact, I remember one time going to the schools, and the teachers, they all had sort of negative reports about you, Keith, you, Andrew, you, Greg, and I walked into the kindergarten, and I said, "Well, what do you have to say about Daniel?" And you know what the teacher said? "He's the perfect kid." I said, "Daniel's the perfect kid?" And you were very easy, and you've been easy ever since. And Robert, I don't know, Robert. You were a handful. You were always crying, always. Oh, I could never seem to make you happy, but I still love you, Robert. You gave me Olivia. Love her too. But anyway, so I went to the races and got heavy into marathon running. And I went to a lot of marathons, and I began to win several trophies. And I guess I wasn't much of a wife to your dad. We sort of have gone our separate ways. And I guess you know that I met David, the Englishman. Well, I'm going a little fast. After all the running from the 26 miles, I ended up doing a 100-miler, the Western States, which I was very proud to think that I could run 100 miles. But again, I should have been on your sidelines. But somehow, I guess I was off on my addictions, and that was running. And
Do you think that by running, do you think that it made you happy, obviously?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Do you think that you were a better mom because you were happy? What if you had given all this time to your kids and you weren't happy? It might show it. Do you think it might have made you happy and a better mom?
Well, I definitely was a happier person, and
do you think they could see it?
Well, I was always complaining. They would have called me in Jewish or kvetch, but they don't even speak Jewish. But a complainer, you know. I was always in a rush. I had to do my running, had to get my artwork done. I also drove around for you guys. I remember forcing you, Robert, to take swimming lessons at 10 because all your brothers could swim, and I couldn't believe you couldn't swim. So I made you take swimming lessons, and you did finally learn to swim. We had summers we did have summers in Big Sur, and they replaced, not quite, but they were still pretty nice. We had to replace Cape Cod in some way, so we went up to Big Sur. There was a big fire one year, and oh boy, Andrew, you gave me a scare. We had all of you in the car, and Andrew, I didn't know where you were. My heart was pounding, and the people at the campground said we had to leave. And Andrew, I will never forget that day as long as I live, that when you came out, I was never so happy in my life. I was just never so happy to see you, that you were alive. He had run off with some guys up in the hills somewhere, and I just was so happy to see him alive. I don't know how much time I have, but I want to tell you, you guys meant a great deal to me. You meant a great deal. You brought a lot of happiness in my life. I went on. I ran across America. I've done some great feats. I've been over the Alps. I've been over the Pyrenees. I was going to take out all my pictures of all the places I've been all over the world. I haven't seen the whole world, as you know, but I guess you got my postcards, and I have them. But I even though I was going to talk about some of my worldly trips, they were good times and they were good memories. But in the end, I'm so glad I came home. The saddest moment in my life, and I want to cry. I was in the south of France, Robert, when I got the news of Matthew being born the way he was. And I don't mean to cry, but it was a very sad moment, and it was pivotal in my changing my whole life. I said, I got to go home and be with my kids. I got to help my son with Olivia and with Adina, and I was glad to give up the running. I mean, I haven't quite given up my exercise.